Well, good afternoon, councillors, and good afternoon, members of the community who are viewing in on live stream. Can I do the traditional acknowledgement, please, of the Darumbal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and pay homage and tribute to their elders, past, present, and emerging. We have a procedural motion first up, councillors, and that will be up on the screen for you very shortly in relation to Councillor Hutton's request to teleconference in because of the short nature of the notice around this meeting. He was unable to be here in person. Under the terms and conditions of our meetings policy, we are able to suspend some of those regulations to allow him to attend on shorter notice than normal, which is 5 days, a notice from him. But obviously because of the short notice of this meeting, he's unable to abide by that 5-day notice requirement. So he's asking that we suspend that rule at this point in time, that provision within the regulation, the policy, I beg your pardon. So that will require a motion, I beg your pardon, and the wording is up there at the moment. So pursuant to section 219(1)H of the meeting procedures policy, to suspend the requirement for Councillor Hutton to make a request 5 days prior to the meeting to approve to use a telephone to remotely participate in the council meeting due to the special council only being called on the day it is proposed to be held. That should be special council meeting. Yep. Sorry. On the first line you've got 2 pursuants. Okay. So does everyone understand the procedural motion, councillors? Okay. Okay, so I'll move that. Yep, procedural motion. All in favour? Carried unanimously, thank you. Councillor Hutton, are you online? No. Not yet. Right.
No, we couldn't put him on notice from there until we received the motion.
Fair enough. Yep. Councillor Hutton, welcome to the meeting. Your attendance has been approved, so your contribution will be welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Councillors.
Okay, councillors, to the matter at hand, given this is a special meeting, we have one topic to deal with. There was a meeting requested by Altum last Friday, initially of the Deputy Mayor, the CEO and myself. At that meeting, we were presented with a number of infrastructure options that Altum are putting to the Minister for Innovation, State Development and Tourism this afternoon at a meeting at 4:30 in Brisbane. As part of their meeting here at Council, the owners of Altum provided us with the list of what they believe to be the infrastructure priorities for the project at Great Keppel Island going forward, and asked that Council provide a letter of support to send to the Minister that they could provide to her at the meeting this afternoon in her office. I guess, councillors, from my perspective, I did point out to them at the meeting that we were unable to provide a letter of support without a formal council resolution. Each individual councillor could perhaps write a letter of support, but there couldn't be a letter of support from council as a whole. So that meeting is currently this one, where we consider whether council is of a view to send a letter of support on behalf of Altum to the Minister in relation to those priority projects that were distributed to you in the list yesterday from the Deputy Mayor. So, councillors, I'll open the table for discussion on this. What I have provided this morning is a draft copy of a potential letter that could be sent. I'm not wedded to it. If you want to make changes to it or not send it at all, that's perfectly fine and up to the table. It was just a suggestion to get the conversation going with a proposed wording of a resolution there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say, are you going to read the letter out for the public to hear to begin with?
I can potentially take advice from the CEO on that. So that should be read out to
If you wish to read that one out, you can.
Okay. So the letter for the public's benefit, and please note this is a draft proposed letter. There is nothing. This is yet to be discussed. So, dear Minister Jones, we understand you are meeting this afternoon with Altum Property Group regarding the Great Keppel Island revitalisation process. We have had regular conversations with Altum since being elected in March regarding the project. At a special meeting of Council, Livingstone Shire Council convened this afternoon, Council resolved as follows. 1. That Council 1 writes to the Minister for Innovation, State Development and Tourism, the Honourable Kate Jones, offering support for the development of Great Keppel Island and the flow and effects it will have for economic development, tourism and job creation. That Council, secondly, in the same letter, acknowledges the financial contribution from the State Government towards improving tourism on Great Keppel Island. And thirdly, that Council requests that the Minister considers the list of infrastructure projects identified by Altum in their meeting with Council on the 4th of September 2020 with a view to arriving at a solution that will provide a positive outcome for our community. In concert with this resolution, Council has always been in support of economic development and tourism, together with the creation of jobs in our Shire. The development of Great Keppel Island will certainly be a catalyst for all of these things, and we look forward to that happening. Commensurately, Council recognises the latest efforts from the Queensland Government in attempting to bring the development of Great Keppel Island to fruition, and thanks the Minister for her efforts in attempting to reach a positive outcome. At a meeting with Altum last Friday, Council was presented with a list of infrastructure projects that Altum deems to be necessary for the revitalisation of Great Keppel Island to be successful. As an interested observer, Council respectfully requests that these projects be considered and discussed at your meeting this afternoon with a view to determining their priority. Again, thank you, Minister, for your work on Great Keppel Island to date, and we look forward to a positive outcome from your meeting with Altum this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. On Friday, there was a meeting held and 4 out of 7 councillors were not involved, nor did they know it was happening, nor was there an invitation. To call this special meeting today puts those 4 councillors in a precarious position. For this particular reason, we do not know what the infrastructure projects are officially, as stated by Altum themselves. We cannot say that we have studied the concept plan, the plans of Marina, or any other plans that Altum may have. We are not ecologists, nor are we scientists, nor we are engineers or marine biologists. So we cannot say unequivocally what their plans entail and what the outcomes of those plans will be. I can honestly say that most of the community, if not all of the community, wants something to go ahead on GKI. It's a jewel in our crown. We do need it to go forward for tourism, for our economy, for our people, for our families. And in saying this, looking at this letter that you've just read out, I believe that number 3 requests that the Minister considers the list of infrastructure projects identified by Altum in their meeting with Council on the 4th of September with a view to arriving at a solution will provide a positive outcome for our community. Well, I believe any movement and any moving forward on GKI will prove to be a positive outcome for our community. But I, for one, cannot accept number 3. Unless I know the facts, I cannot make an informed decision, and therefore I'm not against a letter moving forward in support for something to happen on GKI. I just cannot accept what their infrastructure projects may be because I am unaware and uninformed and not included. So that's all I really wanted to say at this stage. I'm all for a letter of support as long as it is generic, because we don't know what the outcomes will be for us as a council. We don't have any idea of what may happen in the future for this project moving forward. But number 1 and number 2 of that letter, I can concur with, but number 3, I will definitely like to see ruled out. That's what I have to say today. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor. Any other comments, councillors? Councillor Eastwood?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, look, I concur with the good councillor. I guess on the grounds of not enough information and too rushed. And that's just on those 2 points alone, I can't make a huge decision, which this is. I'm incredulous why we didn't get an invite to the meeting on Friday, and that might have quelled my anxieties on this, but at the moment I just have to, as the good councillor said, I'm happy with numbers 1 and 2, but I just can't agree with number 3. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I can just provide some clarity, as I attempted to at the beginning of the meeting. Originally, this meeting was called by Elton. It was my understanding that it was with myself, the Deputy Mayor and the CEO for an update. Obviously, if it had been communicated to me that they were going to present a number of options around infrastructure, I would have called everybody in. So from that point of view, I can only, I suppose, offer my apologies, but certainly I was innocently led into the meeting thinking that it was going to be different to what it was.
Sorry. I don't think there's one person sitting around this table that doesn't want Great Keppel Island to go ahead, for many reasons, and all the reasons that you listed, councillor. It's our future as well, it's the island's future. And it's one of the, as I said in a letter earlier today, it's one of the 3 major issues that we'll be facing this term that we need to overcome, and we need to do it right. And because, and I'm not saying we should have been embroiled in all of the detail that went to the state, that's the state's prerogative to deal with that. And as I understand it, some of the lists, or part of the list that will go to Kate Jones, will include a structure that I understand has lapsed in approval. I don't know that. So we're asking from what I see, we're asking the state to consider something that's already lapsed. So we don't know that information. I'm happy with 1 and 2. I'm happy with anything that would get the minister to consider what we're facing as well. And we don't like to think that the state government, on the eve of a caretaker mode, is going to force us as a council or Eltham into a corner that we have to make decisions that we might not have all the detail for. Our heart's in the right place for the right reasons. But we have to be mindful of what we approve. And as I said, I rang Eltham when I found the meeting was on. I just wanted to say, look, I'm sorry, I'm sure we would have been there had we known. I rang Jerry Christie, one of the people who came as a deputation, just to let them know that we weren't ignoring them. That was all it was for. But when I spoke to the chap from Eltham, Rob, there was obviously more to this than we have knowledge of and what was being built. And I had no knowledge of that at all, including all the rubbish that's piled up there. What's involved? Is this money, public money, state money, going to go to clean up? I don't know. It's not for us to say. But he did tell me of a grand scheme that they had to utilise a lot of that waste product. We had no knowledge of that either. So there seems to be a lot of positives in this, but in the absence of facts, we've got to be very careful as to what we approve. And I don't see anything wrong with 1 and 2, or even 3 for that matter. But I think, being fair to ourselves, we can't really ask the minister to reconsider something that we don't even know what that something is.
Thanks, Councillor Nathan. Councillor Lynch?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm very supportive of, obviously, GKI going ahead like we all are in the community, and it was great to see some of those stakeholders from Great Keppel Island at the meeting, because they live over there, they live it, breathe it, and like everyone, we would like to see a development go ahead, which is what we've all been wanting for a very long time. I guess my question to, through the chair to the CEO, what ramifications will there be on council if we leave point number 3 in the letter?
If I could, through the chair, I guess the ramifications are that you could be seen not to have engaged in full community consultation. You have made that decision based on discussion with a select group. Now, admittedly, that group has a clear interest, I suppose, or more direct interest in the development. However, there are others who also use the island, and there are other businesses associated with the island as well who haven't been privy to those discussions. So, whilst you may be helping or assisting or facilitating one particular group, you haven't necessarily also included the other groups, the other interests as well. And so, could it be seen to be a truly reflective position for the community? I suspect not.
And I guess the time frame is quite short from the list of priorities that we did receive. I would love to have a lot more knowledge. I don't know all the ins and outs of break walls and all sorts of things it takes to build an island with massive infrastructure. So in that case, I'd like to consider option number 3 as well.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Hutton.
Is there a reason we've excluded from the letter explicitly naming the 4 objects or the 4 priorities that are provided by Ultram that they'd like to see council promoting? Only in that I think that would provide some transparency for the community around what we're debating or what we're saying that we've got a level of unknown about.
No particular reason, Councillor, no.
So would it be right in assuming that, it would be, I would think, a positive, even if it is ultimately that the council table decides to vote down part 3 of the resolution, that I think we should include in the resolution for the purposes of the community that the 4 Ultram priorities are: number 1, the breakwall stage 1 dredging; number 2, the jetty; number 3, the barge ramp within the marina precinct lease on the island; and number 4, the wastewater treatment plant. I think that just gives, I'm concerned that for anyone who, similar to myself in fact, maybe at home, there's a gap in what they're understanding from the conversation that we're having as to what we're debating and what we're saying, that we may not have the expertise or the understanding to kind of make some good judgments on.
Hey, thanks, Councillor Hutton. Councillor Bello.
In terms of questions or?
Just any comments?
Yeah, okay, just picking up on Councillor Hutton's suggestion there, I certainly would support the inclusion into the existing motion there, some reference to the 4 elements that Ultram have nominated, and I believe everybody's got those emails, is that correct, to my fellow councillors, so that you can read them yourselves. That's my understanding. As Councillor Hutton's pointed out clearly, I would definitely support them going in there and then allowing the councillors to either, make further amendments, or if that become the ultimate motion, then we vote for or against that. But without those elements in there, it leaves little transparency as to what actually and why Ultram has nominated those elements. So if there could be a reference to the attached 4 elements, maybe the dot points included, and then a reference to the supporting correspondence, I believe that motion would at least satisfy from a transparency and accountability perspective. And then it's the merits of, whether the councillors believe they're prepared to support it. And I guess to add a little bit of context as well, it was a pleasure, I guess, to attend the meeting, and I take on board my fellow councillors' concerns, and I guess the process is, upon reflection, is not perfect, but there was certainly no intent, I believe, by the Mayor or the CEO, or certainly myself, and I think we learn from it, ultimately. We learn from it and we'll be better for it. But I hope that we can ultimately apply a level of discernment and judgment on the merits of the motion, not on the process of how we got here ultimately, because I think I'll be the first, to put my hand up and say I think we could have done it better. But putting that aside and focusing on what's before us, we don't need necessarily, and I'm probably erring into debate, so I'll just pause from there. And the only other information I'd provide is that for the councillors' benefit, we did have another meeting that followed after this one, which the state member attended, Ms Brittany Lauger, and whilst that was not a confidential meeting by any means, but it was one that was set up for another matter. However, we did raise the GKI because I was curious to know of the state member's position if certain elements were to be nominated, which is what Ultim had requested of council ultimately. The state member had a look at the list, said, look, some of them I'm not comfortable with, but some of them I am. I'm comfortable with these here. I'm glad that they reflect those sentiments, and therefore I'd like them to be included in the resolution, and I look forward to debating it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bello. So notwithstanding those four options will be included in the resolution, the recommendation I should say. At this stage, councillors, you've got the recommendation then on the screen there, which contains the 3 points, as I said. Yep, go ahead, councillor.
We'd be willing to split the resolution into two parts, maybe part 1 and 2, and then part 3 separately. I believe that it seems like there's a general intent that through debate we'll find that part 1 and 2 are supported unanimously, or would appear unanimous at this point, and then maybe we can do part 3 separately. I just don't want us to potentially throw out the baby with the bathwater. If that's the wrong analogy, I do apologise, but.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. That's a good suggestion. So we might separate 1 and 2, Mr. Acting CEO, and have a separate recommendation for what was formerly point 3. Justine.
Mr. Chair. Just picking up on Councillor Hutton there, is it possible, well, could we list those 4 elements in the actual resolution?
Yep, you'll probably have to dictate them to Justine.
Could I perhaps move a procedural motion that we just adjourn until the motion gets tidied up, perhaps for 10 minutes?
Okay, procedural motion. You're moving, Councillor Bello.
Yes,
all in favour? No, we just adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes while we clarify the wording. Okay. All in favour? Thank you.
further raise a potential conflict of interest in that as president of the Ypern Lions Club. Ypern Lions has a leasehold on Great Keppel Island. We have a fixed lease with a subleasee, and therefore day-to-day changes to works on the island does not affect the contributions that are made to the Lions Club. It's used as a fundraising tool so that we can then put funds back into the community. It's not a personal conflict, but I'd ask for the table to make a judgment whether I'm able to remain in the meeting for this decision-making process.
All right, councillors, does anyone see a potential conflict of interest for Councillor Hutton here? All right. We're all pleased for you to remain in the conversation, councillor.
Thank you.
All right, so looking at the proposed recommendations, councillors, and for the members of the community, that Council 1 writes to the Minister for Innovation, State Development and Tourism, the Honourable Kate Jones, offering support for the development of Great Keppel Island and the flow-on effects it will have for economic development, tourism and job creation. And 2, in the same letter, acknowledge the financial contribution from the State Government towards improving tourism on Great Keppel Island. Councillors, so we'll go into debate on this one, councillors, so have a mover and a seconder.
In the interest of streamlining our thinking, could we just use the wording of the second one for the first?
Well, we're going to treat them as separate resolutions, councillor, so we can actually debate the first and the second one. Put your microphone on, yep.
If this is lost and we look to the second one and it's lost, we have nowhere to go. So that's what I'm thinking. We need to have it in our head what options we have before we start debate.
All right, well, we'll read the second recommendation then, councillor. And that is that council requests that the Minister considers the below list of infrastructure projects identified by Altum with a view to arriving at a solution that will provide a positive outcome for our community. And the list of infrastructure projects are, firstly, a break wall, stage 1 and dredging, 2, a jetty, 3, a barge ramp with marine precinct lease, and 4, wastewater treatment plant. Okay.
Is 1 and 2 going with that one?
No, they're separate recommended resolutions, councillor. They will be separate, and we can debate them separately.
More than happy to move the first recommendation, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, councillor moved Councillor Hutton, seconded Councillor Eastwood. All right, we're now in debate. Councillor Mather, any other comments?
No, my question was
That was number 3 of the original, but it is now a separate motion in its own right. All right, councillors, in relation to the first proposed resolution, I'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Eastwood, do you move that? Councillor Hutton, I beg your pardon, would you like to speak to it?
Of Great Keppel Island and recognise that the flow-on effects it will have for both economic development, tourism and job creation are positive for our community. While our community has grown since the previous resort closed down, we can see with the return of tourists to Great Keppel and with more people holidaying in their own backyard that this is a very special place, and as in the words of the other councillors, that this is the jewel in the crown. And I think any contribution that we can make, which we've previously made in terms of our budget towards providing infrastructure, is a positive one, and also recognising the contribution of the state government. And I think that this letter is timely to express our continued support for development on the island, but also to express our sincere thanks for the financial contribution of the state government and the partnerships that they have with us, so that we can make the jewel in the crown of Great Keppel truly stand up and serve our community's needs.
Thank you, Councillor Hutton. Is anyone speaking against the proposed resolution? No. Councillor Eastwood, would you like to speak to it?
Again, just briefly, Mr. Mayor, GKI is a special place and we're actually in a special time. And the the writing on the wall looks like we're going to have a lot more domestic tourism, and so it's a fantastic time to give as much support as we can to getting GKI up and usable, but not only back to its former glory, but actually going past its former glory. And so in that way, I think this is a fantastic, a great way to start this off by not only thanking the state government for their support, but also writing to them to basically to offer support for the future development of the island. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eastwood. Could you turn your microphone off? Thanks. Thank you, Councillor Eastwood. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Mather.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. The wording is appropriate, Mr Mayor. I support it. We stand by it. It's an endorsement in principle for development on the island. And this council will do, I'm sure, will do everything in its power to facilitate development that will benefit all of the people, all of the business houses and the Shire as a future. The wording may not be sufficient to satisfy the developer or perhaps even some of the business houses, but I believe that they need to understand council's restriction in knowing what has been taking place as far as negotiations go, and our limited knowledge, intimate knowledge as to what has been approved, what is approved, what continues to be approved before moving forward. And council has a liability not only to the organisation but to the people of the Shire to recognise its limitations and its legal boundaries. And I believe that given the discussion that we've had as to what we can do and what we should do and what we'd like to do, this will satisfy all, because we will continue to support the state and we thank the state for its contribution, but we also recognise that we have a liability to anything that goes on the island as well, and we want to be very sure that as a very prominent stakeholder that we will be able to harness whatever it is that's put to us and we have control over it. At the moment we have control within the knowledge that we have, and I believe that it's a very, very appropriate motion, and I trust that all of those people who are watching today or who have a stake in our decision making will appreciate where we're coming from, because our interests are in the interest of all of the Shire, and that includes all the businesses. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Would anyone else like to speak to the proposed resolution? All good. Councillor. Okay, go ahead, Councillor.
I would. As they say, it doesn't matter so much where you start, it's where you finish. And I'm glad that we're here with two elements of a resolution that we would not have been here had we not have decided to do it. So the community is going to get to hear the voice of their elected members on this. And that's a very positive thing. And I'm very glad to support this. I don't think there's any debate about we all want it to happen. We all want it to see it go ahead. The question will really be, what are we prepared to do about it? That's really what it comes down to. What are we prepared to do about it in the role that we play here as elected members of this local council? And the meeting that took place on Friday, which was also attended by 5 or 6 businesses that have been through some pretty challenging times, I can assure you, as I'm sure you would all know. They're employers of our teenagers. The Hideaway over there is probably has been through some really, really challenging times with the cyclone. They've done their best to build a revetment wall that is still being very much challenged. And whilst there is no marina out off there, that wall is very vulnerable to every cyclone event that comes between here and the next however many years it's there. And so those businesses are the ones that are employing our kids. Those businesses are the ones that we identified in our Community 2050 plan, where something like 37% of the population said, we hope council focuses on economic development. That's what our community told us loud and clear. So I'm glad that we've got this part of it up here, and I believe it's very worthwhile supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bello. Okay, councillors, given I think now that the debate is pretty much finished, we'll go to a vote on this one. So we have a mover in Councillor Hutton, a seconder in Councillor Eastwood. All in favour? Aye. Aye. So unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Hutton online. Thank you, Justine. It's unanimous. Okay, councillors, we'll move to the second proposed resolution or recommendation, and that is that council requests that the minister considers the below list of infrastructure projects identified by Alton with a view to arriving at a solution that will provide a positive outcome for our community. So in order, and the four projects were the breakwall, stage 1 and dredging, 2, the jetty, 3, barge ramp with marina precinct lease, and 4, wastewater treatment plant. So councillors, will go to debate on this one. So can I have a mover and a seconder to start the debate off, please? Councillor Lynch is moving. Seconded Councillor Bello. Okay, so Councillor Lynch, would you like to speak to the...
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Whilst we are all for development of Great Keppel Island, and especially, you know, through COVID, we've seen a massive influx of tourists to our town. I, you know, really commend Alton for all their hard work they've done to put into a proposal for a resort over there. I am not an expert in these requests of a breakwall and things that I really don't have a lot of understanding about. I would love to have a lot more community consultation to what the whole community would like to see on that island. I would like to have a little bit more time and a lot more understanding. I'm happy to support, you know, Alton in their drive to get this resort up and going, but as far as having these as a priority 1 to 4 on this recommendation here, I just need a lot more understanding of what is involved and the cost of everything that's involved.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just a question. Councillor, so you're not speaking for the motion?
I'm not speaking for the priority of how it is it?
So you're just supporting the consideration of those 4 projects, Councillor?
I support the fact that they've brought this to the table.
Okay, so if I can just read that proposed resolution again, is it council requests that the minister considers the below list of infrastructure projects identified by Alton with a view to arriving at a solution that will provide a positive outcome for our community in those 4 projects. Breakwall, stage 1 and dredging, 2, jetty, 3, barge ramp with marina precinct lease, and 4, wastewater treatment plant. So you're not supporting the priorities as established by Alton, but you are supporting that recommendation.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Bello.
Through Mr. Chair, with permission to perhaps assist in advancing this, can I propose an amendment to the motion that's up there, to the mover of the motion, which was Councillor Lynch, something to the effect, the wording that says that Livingstone Shire Council requests that the Queensland State Government continue to negotiate with Alton and other interested GKI stakeholders within our community with a view to advancing the development of key elements that will benefit the economic potential of GKI. So it is nominating that clearly there is elements that are going to be important to all stakeholders. Alton certainly one of them, and there's other businesses as well.
If I can jump in here, Councillor, this is a proposed motion. We'll need to deal with this one first.
Yeah, I'm asking, would the mover consider an amendment?
Okay. Yeah, it's not an amendment, it's a different motion, Councillor. So we've got to deal with this one first.
I'll just foreshadow that one, if I could, Mr. Chair, as an alternate motion should this one here be lost. So I'll just read it again. requests that the Queensland State Government continue to negotiate with Ultim and other GKI stakeholders with a view to advancing the development of key elements that will benefit the economic potential of GKI. Something along those lines.
All right, so noted. Thank you, councillor. All right, so councillor Lynch, are you still comfortable proposing this one, moving this one? Yes. Okay, thank you. So it's been moved. Councillor Lynch, seconded councillor Bello. Councillor Bello, did you want to speak to this at all?
Well, in the interest that I've proposed an alternate motion, I'd like to withdraw my support for this motion and ask Councillor Lynch whether she'd be prepared to do the same to enable perhaps this motion to fall for the lack of a mover and a seconder, and that this alternate be considered.
I don't think. That's the correct process, councillor. So,
Happy to withdraw my support for the motion on the basis that I've flagged an alternate motion.
all right. You're
Thank you.
comfortable with that, Mr. Acting CEO. All right. So, at this stage, councillors, we have a mover in councillor Lynch and no seconder. Do we have a seconder? Okay, so I'm assuming there's no seconder, so the motion lapses.
Based on that, Mr. Chair, that motion is lapsed, I'd like to propose.
Hang on a second, councillor. Thank you. I know we're all keen. Okay. So, councillor Bello, would you mind dictating your proposed resolution, please?
If I could perhaps take it over to Justine, if that's right, Mr. Chair.
Feel free, councillor. Thank you. Actually, just pass it to Dave. Thanks, councillor Bello.
You might be able to read the writing.
Indeed it is, councillor. It's all part of due process and transparency.
Query from the CEO, recognising that this is a special meeting as opposed to a general meeting. The definition of a special meeting says that it can only deal with business that can be stated in the notice of meeting. So would us adopting or even considering a foreshadowed motion that's not on the agenda be okay?
Yes, through the chair, because it's still directly related to the item that's listed on the agenda, it is acceptable. Had you decided to stray onto a different topic or even a different component or proponent on that island, councillor, I would suggest we would be coming into interesting territory, but I'm comfortable with what's currently operating.
Thank you very much.
All right, councillors, we have a proposed resolution now that reads as follows. You're right, Justine? Okay. That council requests that the Queensland State Government continue to negotiate with Altum and other interested Great Keppel Island stakeholders with a view to advancing the development of key elements that will benefit the future economic potential of Great Keppel Island. All right, so councillor Bello, I'm assuming you're going to move this. Are there any, sorry, before we go forward, are there any questions of Councillor Bell in relation to this recommendation?
Certainly through you, Mr Chair. Councillor Bello, what key elements did you have in mind with this particular resolution?
The positive thing about that, and thank you for the question, is that the state government is aware of many elements that they've identified themselves, and that Oldham, the Hideaway, the pizza shop, the camping, Jeff Mercer's over there, they're all wanting to contribute towards identifying the elements that they believe are going to benefit this, the future of Keppel Island. So I think there's many people that would be part of this, that are captured in that, in this motion, that hopefully could be considered by the state government in their determination of where their dollars are going to be spent. So I guess it's not for me ultimately to stipulate elements 1, 2, 3 or 4. It's to say, as it does there, happy for anybody to put forward elements if they would like to.
Go ahead, Councillor Hutton.
I just wanted to ask if the council is aware of any current engagement processes being undertaken in regards to the state government's funding and the spend that they're looking to allocate on Great Keppel Island.
I am aware of certainly the discussion in the streets that's going on at the moment, and there were certainly 5 businesses here the other day that did their best to put forward their support for the previous 4 that are up there, and I'm sure that the state government would welcome the opportunity to undertake further consultation. So I guess this is really reinforcing the importance of doing that. Thank you.
So I was just confirming whether there's currently already, so I'm conscious that the CEO mentioned that there was a meeting on Wednesday where council was contacted in regards to some process, and I'm not sure if the process is the same, but is there already an engagement process occurring that in some ways that this is almost superfluous and that we're encouraging them to engage with stakeholders, and the reply back might be, in fact, we've been doing it, for the last week, fortnight, whatever.
Well, Councillor Hutton, can I suggest that discussion be held over to debate? At this stage, we're just looking at couching the resolution. I think it's an excellent point to raise during debate. Councillor, any other questions of Councillor Bello? All right, Councillor Bello, sorry, Councillor Mather.
I was looking at deleting some of the words to give it what we want without being specific. You know what I mean? It's more like a generic request that the Queensland State Government continue to negotiate with Eltham and other stakeholders, which would be us too. Relevant stakeholders with a view to advancing a development or the development that will benefit the future economic potential of GKI. Because I didn't particularly want to put in key.
I'm happy to withdraw key.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the proposed recommendation now.
Advancing the development or redevelopment. Does that sound a little bit confusing? Yeah, I think so. Advancing the development, take out that will benefit the future. Yeah, let's look at that again. request that the Queensland State Government continue to negotiate with Elton and other relevant stakeholders, take out Great Keppel Island. Stakeholders, with a view to advancing the development of elements that will benefit the future economic potential of Great Keppel Island. Sounds pretty good?
All right, councillors, the new recommendation is as appears on the board. I'll read it again, that council requests that the Queensland State Government continue to negotiate with Altum and other relevant stakeholders with a view to advancing the development of elements that will benefit the future economic potential of Great Keppel Island. All right, Councillor Bello, you're moving this?
Yes, Mr Chair.
And may I have a seconder, please? Can you turn the mic? Thanks. Councillor Mather is seconding. Okay. Councillor Bello, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Chair, and thank you, councillors, and also thank the community that may be watching for your patience. This is not always what would you say, a smooth process. It can be a bit clunky, and no one here pretends to be experts on this, but we're, I believe, trying our best that we can. And the motion that we've come up here, that I've come up, and I thank the councillor for seconding it, is really about, it's one thing to say that we support the development. I'm looking, I guess, for a way that we can get this onto the front pages of our newspapers, even though we don't have one as much anymore, but the front pages, or the, at least on the conversations of people within our community. Hopefully they'll knock on the door of every candidate in the upcoming state election to say, what are you doing about Keppel Island? I hope that this is a small step towards identifying that there are key elements within that $25 million which we previously thanked the state government for, and I do that again. But I hope that they can negotiate with whoever is in the box seat of being the developer of the approved development. It is approved, and the negotiations can be as fruitful as possible to bring about the further development. What is the circuit breaker that the GKI needs? And we've talked about COVID. We're in pretty good times here at the moment in Livingstone and in CQ, but we also need to understand that that period may be very different when stimulus measures are withdrawn, which they'll have to be withdrawn, because our spiralling debt cannot continue to support the measures that are currently in place. So this is about looking beyond that. We've got an interested developer. It's a Queensland company, which is a positive. And I hope that in good faith that the state government can negotiate with not just Eltham, but other stakeholders as well, to come up with the very best elements that are going to advance the landscape of Keppel Island as the jewel in the crown, which we've talked about. The other point that I think needs to be made, and this is more of an engineering point, and it ties in with Council's endorsement of the state government's coastal hazard adaptation strategy, the CHAS 2100, I think it's called. Hoping the CEO might have nodded his head to say, Councillor Bello, you've got it right again. Excellent. So that CHAS is all about identifying the coastal hazards that we will face on our coastlines. And one of the elements in there that they identify is that revetment walls, breakwater walls, infrastructure like that is very effective at reducing the impact of heavy seas. Okay, on the Gold Coast, the council spent $30 million on putting in an artificial reef off Palm Beach to reduce the swell impact. The surfers loved it, but the council paid for that. Okay, so it's that marina there and that break wall, whoever pays for it, if in the event it was built, it would be extremely positive for that island and extremely positive for the hideaway who currently sit there very vulnerable, desperately trying to hang on and survive as a financial business over there. If that break wall was built, hypothetically, the hideaway's sandbag revetment wall could be removed completely. It would never be needed again for the duration that that other breakwall or that marina was there. You would return Putney Beach back to a very natural state without the bags in front of the hideaway, and the spit would return to the way it was more than likely. So I guess what I'm asking you to look broader than just the discussions we've had before, and hopefully support this for the intent that is written within it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bello. Councillors, I'll hog the floor for a second, if I may. I'm going to speak against this, not because I don't support Great Keppel Island development, and not because I don't necessarily support the motion as it stands and the intent of it, as Councillor Bello just alluded to. I just don't think it achieves anything, frankly. I'm not sure that in requesting the Queensland State Government to continue negotiations with ALTM and other key relevant stakeholders isn't something they're already going to do anyway. So from my perspective, I think it's a little bit superfluous. But having said that, you know, if this is passed by councillors, I'll obviously support it. Anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors, and apologies for before. I'm just still learning the ropes here, but thank you, Councillor Bella, for putting forward this council resolution. I'm in full support of it. I would love to see, if not ALTM, another developer go forward with the development of Great Keppel Island. And as far as a sort of break wall is proposed, firstly, it would 100% benefit the island over there. As we know, the bags on the island aren't the most appealing looking feature that's there, but it's just about supporting something that the community has wanted for so many years. It's been 10, 12 long years of you know, nothing really going on, and we would love to see Great Keppel Island move ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor, are you speaking against it, Councillor? Against. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am certainly all for the proposal and the progress of GKI, whether it be ALTM or another developer, as Councillor Lynch has just stated. I'm all for that. I'm not against breakwaters either, but I do think that we need to keep in mind that we are not engineers, that we do not understand how these things actually work until we have the plans, and we have not had a briefing in relation to this meeting. We have not had any formal or professional advice in relation to breakwaters, marinas, etc. So what I'd like to ask through you, Mr Mayor, to the CEO, is that durable fabric geobags, which protect, perhaps will protect the jetty in the future from storm surge, cyclones, etc. Is that not what is already over there in that revetment wall, wall over there? And I believe that these bags contain plastics, and plastics actually break up. They don't break down, and which ends up as microplastics within the environment. So, Mr CEO, what is the current bags and revetment wall over at GKI made of?
Through the chair, I'd have to take that on notice, Councillor. They're geotextile bags, but what their precise material is, I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head.
So, in conclusion, as I've said, I'm all for a future development, but I am going to vote against this particular motion on those grounds that there wasn't enough information given to us before this meeting today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Would anyone wish to speak for the motion, please? Microphone.
I'll speak for the motion. Firstly, just I guess in reply to some of Councillor Friend's comments in relation to the sandbags and breakwalls, I don't think there's anything actually even mentioned in the resolution about those. So I'm actually happy to support this motion. It does seem to duplicate some of the motion that we just put up previously, as in the first part of the first resolution, which kind of nearly makes it superfluous, but it's worth supporting anyway. I'm not convinced about some of the signs with break walls myself. A good councillor mentioned the Palm Beach break wall. And the Gold Coast City Council also put up two break walls at Kirra Beach, which one they dismantled and one has been less than halved in length. So I'm not absolutely positive in that science, but that's not for us to talk about, and it's not part of this resolution. Hence, I am very happy to support this resolution, and we move on, and hopefully Great Keppel Island will move on to a greater and brighter future. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Eastwood. Is anyone else speaking against it?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Go ahead.
Councillors, I accept the criticism of the Mayor in suggesting that this resolution is a duplication and in some ways is telling someone how to suck eggs when they're actually already undertaking it. To understand that there's an engagement process being undertaken by the state government around the money that was announced just a few short weeks ago, which was based on from conversations that had occurred some 3 years ago with island residents, stakeholders and other groups who, when they said, hey, we've got 25 million originally, they believed that they were going to be able to build a water pipeline to the island and have money left over. So they sought feedback from the community as to some of those other aspirations and things that might be wanted. Obviously, as we know, history is never kind to people who dream big, or in this case, unfortunately, the costs of that pipeline were just too high and were not going to be achievable for the Queensland government. So they've now got this funding that they're seeking to reinvest in infrastructure and projects on the island that will support the island in its current form and not wait for some future development to occur. And I think that's really important, is that while the resolution that we have in front of us right now talks about adding to future capacity and making sure that this money is invested in a way that promotes future growth, we don't forget the current operations and the current activities that are already occurring on the island. And as Councillor Bello said, we see a resurgence of people with post-COVID travel looking to spend time locally. They're there already, and so I would like to see the government spend their funds in a way that's a reflection of that. And yes, I believe that, it's time for planning for advancing a future, but it also means that we should be investing funds in a way that's being used now. And the stakeholder program that's being undertaken by the state government is talking to Ultram, it is talking to other parties on the island, it is talking with island-based businesses as well as groups including council to seek what's our advice and our suggestions as to the highest and greatest use. We need to advance that, and I promote the fact that and commend the state government for doing it. But the recommendation that we're being asked to support at this time is simply a duplication of that effort. And if our goal, which in the words of the mover, is to just get some community awareness or promotion around the fact that GKI is existing, then maybe we should be having a motion around how we promote the talents and existing businesses on the island, or promote the projects that are already occurring in that space. Or maybe we need to be speaking to the state government about how do they actually speak to the community so that they're conscious of the fact that they are doing stakeholder engagement and get to have their say. So if it's about getting some headline space for that, then I think there are better ways than what can be achieved through the adoption of this resolution today, and therefore I'll be voting against it. It's nothing against the gentlemen from Ultram and their development. I greatly admire their tenacity and their ambition and hope for them all the best. However, as we previously discussed, when these things come up, we have to take them on face value, and at face value, as a community, we need really good information as community leaders to make good decisions, and we couldn't support, I don't believe, a list of requests from Ultram that we hadn't had an opportunity to get professional advice on, and nor should we now, in having decided that we don't wish to advance promoting a list of projects that are not developed or not advanced enough so that we can actually research them and provide a thorough response. I don't believe we should be now taking the opportunity to say, hey, to the state government, you're engaging with the community, that's great, you need to do it more. And thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hutton. All right, is anyone speaking for the motion? Councillor May.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Last but not least, perhaps, hopefully. Mr Mayor, if it does appear to duplicate what we've already said, I'm sure that nobody's going to worry too much about that if it's going to clarify what we actually mean and what we hope will happen, and that's to ask the state government, with the little time that it has left before caretaker mode, not to give up at this point in this afternoon when that discussion may be held with the developer, but to continue right up until stakeholders to broker an outcome. The motion, as it stands, does not talk about geobags, it does not talk about marina, does not talk about a break wall, or try to be something that we don't have any expertise, knowledge of. And I can understand members speaking against it. I clearly understand that, and they're legitimate concerns. Any environmental issue, any issue that's being considered needs to be and should be, and I think is, dealt with under EIS. That's determined by the state government. We as a stakeholder have a responsibility to push ourselves forward on anything that goes on over there, and certainly we should be encouraging, if not demanding, that the state confer with us, because we've really been on the outside in all of this, and that's why we're feeling how we are today. The state government, speaking to the community, I don't think it's taken a really good path down that line, with all respect to the money that they've provided, because there's been a whole big turnaround. There's been money thrown at it with no thought about who's going to install the essential services, who's going to maintain it, how much it's going to cost, who's going to come up with the rest of the money. None of that's been discussed. So the public notification to us, being major stakeholders, has been absent. And we should be demanding to know more about whatever is going on in the state's mind so that we can complement anything that's going to be built. Because we want this to happen more than anybody. We don't want another 11 years of nothing. We'd be bankrupt mentally if we were to allow that to happen. Yes, Elton do have tenacity, they do have ambition, but right now we need that sort of character to be able to push this forward, to give the island and the mainland a future. Because at the moment, it's looking fairly bleak if these people fall over. Because the state government will probably fall over too, because it hasn't given clear direction as to what it's intended, what it wants, and what it's expected of us as a council. So I think they've really fallen down to some degree, and we've got to just make sure that we're out there with the right foot forward.
Thanks, Councillor Mather. Councillor Lynch, did you want to take the floor? Okay, thank you. Right, councillors, we've reached that time. Debate is closed. Councillor Bello.
Yeah, okay, just wrap up, Mr Chair. And thank you, councillors, for your contribution. It is very, very well received. In wrapping up, GKI it has a residential component, and it has a commercial component about it. Many people enjoy going to Keppel, as I'm sure you all do, and it is the commercial operators primarily that have allowed the thousands and thousands over the years to enjoy Great Keppel Island. For those who don't have a boat, who hop on the Freedom Fastcat once a year, or they get on the Keppel Connection, or the Oceanas or the Fiesta that was back here in the 60s, there's been many boats, there's been planes go over there. That's done by commercial people who take a risk like anyone in business, and we know that business, for those who are in it, who live it, right, it is a tough gig. So I have no problem putting this forward, and even if it's only a token gesture that I can do and I can influence, well then I'm prepared to put forward that token gesture to say, please, state government, negotiate in good faith with Ultim and the other stakeholders to bring about the best elements out of that bucket of money that is going to advance Keppel Island to hopefully attract it to more and more people. That is what this is about. I don't agree that it's superfluous. It may only be the smallest of percentage of improvement, but nevertheless it is an improvement somewhat. And having the word Ultim in there, who at this point in time is the only one looking at trying to advance it. We've had multiple ones in the past, but now we've only got this one looking at it. And I hope that they can pull it off. And I hope, after listening to the 5 businesses that come here the other day, who employ our kids, who help them through school, who help people who don't have a job, I hope and I believe and I feel that they would be proud of this motion. They would at least feel as if their efforts coming here were not in vain. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belloc. All right, councillors, so we'll wrap the debate up now and we'll go to the vote. So we have the resolution before us. Would anyone like me to read it again? For the sake of the clarity, thank you, all right. But Council requests that the Queensland State Government continue to negotiate with Ultim and other relevant stakeholders with a view to advancing the development of elements that will benefit the future economic potential of Great Keppel Island. Are we all clear, councillors? All right. Those in favour? Those against? Councillor Hutton, against?
Yes.
Okay. The vote is successful. It's carried 4-3.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask respectfully, whilst that there is not, we haven't said that we write a letter stating this, but can it be included in the same correspondence?
That was my intention.
Yeah,
Councillor.
great. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, councillors, so our business for today is concluded. Thank you for your attendance, and we'll see you tomorrow for our next special meeting.
8:30, Mr. Chair.
No.
Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you, Nigel.